Welcome to Real Review, a podcast to help you decide for yourself if a movie or TV show is worth your time, money, and energy.
Welcome to a very special and merry episode of Real Review. We are doing a Christmas movie debate with our special guests from Afternoons on Real FM. We have Ansen.
Hello.
We have Kara.
Hey.
And so the way I have constructed this wonderful debate, which will not go wrong at all, is we each have a Christmas movie that we think is the best Christmas movie, and we're going to fight to the death. To the death. For which one is the best Christmas movie. So let's all just say what our best Christmas movie is. Why don't you start, Ansen?
Oh, okay. Well, I picked a classic from 1983, A Christmas Story.
Ooh.
One of my personal favorites. Probably, it is my favorite. I'm claiming that.
Yeah.
In
okay.
absolutist
and you're
terms.
going to defend it with your life.
Yes,
okay.
right. Sorry.
Gotcha.
I'm catching up to this.
Yeah.
And Kara?
Mine is A Muppet Christmas Carol, which came out in 1992. So I was 6 years old. So
Aww.
The nostalgia's strong with us, all right? So y'all are going to have to tear this out of my hands, out of my cold dead hands.
Yeah. Okay.
There you go. Kara's getting with
I'm
it.
getting in the spirit.
Okay. And mine is Elf from 2003, which makes it 20 years old.
There you go.
And fun fact, for a movie to be considered a classic, it has to be at least 20 years old.
Oh,
so
okay.
even though I would consider
Fun.
Elf an instant classic, it is now officially
Officially
a classic.
Okay.
And crazy that movie is 20 years old.
That is kind of crazy. Yeah.
All right. So what we are going to do first is we need to set some definitions. We need to set some terms for what we are arguing for.
Okay.
So we need to find out together what defines a movie as the best Christmas movie before we launch into our actual debate. So let's agree on that term right now.
All right. We have to agree.
Oh, I
huh?
was
Yeah, we
going
have
to
to
say.
agree.
That could be a challenge.
That could be a challenge.
This is our first challenge.
Well, Kara mentioned it, and I do think it's a critical part of Christmas movies and rating them is the nostalgia factor.
Yep. That was number one on my list.
Is it not? Yeah.
Feel good
nostalgia is a big part of the holiday season just in general. So I feel like that definitely has to be
high.
At least a major component for a good Christmas movie.
100%. Yeah. Another one on my list would be like a broad audience appeal.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So like a lot of different people. Like
Yeah,
it
this
and
is why
enjoy it.
Hallmark can't make it to this category.
That's true.
Hallmark is
Right.
niche.
That's
you know?
true. It is a little bit too narrow.
Yep.
At least not
Agreed.
appealing to me.
Yeah.
I can confirm.
True story.
Yes. Okay. So we want, you said, something appealing to a mass audience, and we need something with some nostalgia.
Yeah.
And I would argue there needs to be some originality to it.
Yeah, sure.
You know,
Okay.
that's what helps it stand up to other Christmas movies is the
That's
fact
fair.
that it's original. So we agree with
I think those are three pretty good pillars to judge by. Sure.
Originality, nostalgia, and mass appeal.
Okay. I like it.
Okay. All right.
good.
Now that we have our definition for what makes the best Christmas movie, we need to do our opening arguments. And I don't have a good way for determining who should start first. I should have thought of that.
Me.
I was going to say, Ansen has a good way.
Mine's the
okay.
best, so I'll go first.
Okay.
How about that?
Gotcha. Let's do that. And we'll just go around then.
All right. So I've got just a few minutes to make my case, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you have 3 minutes. I'll get a timer.
3 minutes. Oh, a timer. Wow, that's
I'm
official.
sorry. I was in speech and debate in high school. This is how we are
how we
doing
roll.
this.
All
Yes.
right. A Christmas Story is presented. Have both of you seen the movie?
Yes.
Yes, I have.
Okay, it's presented as a series of vignettes, right?
Yes.
So a lot of like individual scenes that make up a whole movie. They don't really make movies like this anymore.
No.
But this was a classic thing back in the 70s and 80s. And the interesting thing about this movie is when it came out, it wasn't really all that popular. Like it did
Yeah.
okay in theaters, but over time it became the Christmas classic that it is today.
Yeah.
And I think the reason why A Christmas Story is so good, in my view, is because of the nostalgia factor, the originality, and just the relatability. Like each of these vignettes, when you watch it, whether you're a kid or an adult, you see it and you go, oh, yeah. Like I may not have experienced that exact situation, but I have been in a situation like that or one similar to it, and probably around the holidays.
Yeah.
So it just brings you back to Christmas, right? Like I will admit the movie, if you didn't grow up with it as a kid, it's a little off the wall. It's a little weird. It feel like, and so I acknowledge all of that, but underneath that, like, that's part of the appeal. Like it makes it relatable because everyone has weird relatives around the holidays. Everybody has like those weird, strange moments that happen during Christmas time. So just a few examples of some of the vignettes in here. The main one obviously is the main character, Ralphie, and his BB gun that he wants.
Yeah.
Every kid, and I know both of you would agree with this, can relate to that one Christmas present that you wanted with all of your heart, right? And some adult told you like, it's too expensive.
You're never going to
or
get that.
you're not going to get that. Or that's a silly thing to want. Or in the case of Ralphie, you'll shoot your eye out.
Yes,
right?
yes.
And so every kid knows like, I just want this thing more than life itself. And hearing from adults that you shouldn't want it.
It's crushing.
But then you end up getting it. And it's like the best day of your life, right?
Yeah.
Another one is the old man, which by the way, I love that the dad doesn't actually have a name in the movie. He's just the old man.
Oh my gosh.
He fights this like never ending battle with the malfunctioning furnace in his home.
Yes.
And like every adult around the holidays has experience with like the heat going out or like dealing with stuff around your home. So that one's relatable.
Oh man.
There's Ralphie eagerly checking the mail every day for his like secret decoder ring. And we've all probably fallen victim to like some like marketing device or something from some company or like, oh, if I just like learn the secret code or do this thing, I'll be able to earn this like really special prize or reward or something. And then it turns out to be kind of underwhelming. So that one's another one. Ralphie accidentally lets an F-bomb slip when he's helping his dad change a tire. He gets his mouth washed out with soap. Probably most of us have had that experience. And then on top of that, he fantasizes that night about dying, or no, it was going blind from soap poisoning.
Oh my god!
And then his parents feeling bad. Oh, I can't believe that we used soap to wash out your mouth. Like that was so
Your
terrible
time
of
is
us.
up,
One
Ansen.
more. I'm gonna, because this is a classic of a debate too, is like going over by 30 seconds.
Okay, 30 seconds.
The last one is Ralphie receiving the bunny onesie.
Oh yes.
From Aunt Clara.
Yeah.
Did you guys both not have like some relative who always gave you like a weird present or like an embarrassing one? Like
And you
the
had to
aunt
be
that
like,
gives you a pink bunny suit and you had to be like, oh, it's great.
Thank you.
And then putting it on. So all of those like just add up to this thing of like, you watch this movie and you go, oh yeah, I did that. Oh yeah, I experienced that. Oh yeah, my family's weird in that way.
Interesting.
And I think that like nostalgia and relatability is what ultimately makes A Christmas Story one of the best Christmas
Interesting.
movies.
Okay. All right.
All right, Kara, it's your turn.
Has made his case. All right. So the Muppet Christmas Carol, you have all of these amazing things coming together. So you have this classic story that is beloved by many generations, A Christmas Carol. But then you bring in the magic. And by the way, it's a surprisingly like accurate, faithful what's the word I'm looking for?
Adaptation?
Yes, adaptation of this story. If you actually like look at the original story and look at these words, like it's straight out of the book. It's pretty impressive. So there's that. But then you have the Muppets and beloved Jim Henson. And this movie was, I think, came out slightly after his untimely death. And so you have just all of these beloved characters from your childhood, making it not only like magical, but relatable and funny. So you have this like serious Christmas story that you're getting, but then you also have these hilarious hijinks from Gonzo, who is Charles Dickens, and his sidekick Rizzo the Rat, and just like endless hijinks, but they're so good and so funny. And so that gives it this broad audience appeal, right? Because you've got the kids watching, then you've got mom and dad, and you've got like, even if you're kind of like, oh, I'm not into this movie, like you're laughing along with the Muppets because you can't help yourself because they're the Muppets. And they're the best. And then also I am a sucker for a good musical. It's got all of this lovely, like this score, like these songs, but also just this, it's just classic peak Christmas. It's this Victorian, like there's snow on everything. I just watched the opening credits and I'm just like, it's Christmas. Like I just feel better about life just watching this movie. It's beautiful. It's a cult classic for a reason. And I just think it's the best. It's the best thing. And like I have watched this probably every year for the last like 30 years. So, and it stood the test of time. People still like follow this as a cult classic movie.
You have 50 more seconds.
I have 50
do you
seconds?
want to
You're
use them?
efficient.
Do you want to use them?
Man.
You can, or you can.
Let me see.
I yield my time.
My
Mic drop.
I will say, let me look at my notes real quick.
40 seconds.
Now you're running out of time.
Oh, here's one more just like fun little tidbit for you. I rented this for the first time from the grocery store as a VHS when I was a kid.
Nice.
Aww.
That is how like nostalgic and how embedded this is in my like memory and history. And it's one of those movies that like my parents and I, we still quote to each other, especially the Gonzo Rizzo lines like hoity toity, Mr. Godlike Smarty Pants. That's one of our favorites. And now I'm watching it I convinced my husband to watch it with me last night in preparation for
Yes.
and I was like, oh, it's so good.
Just brings the warm fuzzies.
It does.
All right, you've made time.
Okay.
Good job. Okay, my turn. So, Elf. Elf, in my opinion, was an instant classic. The minute that Elf showed up on the scene, it solidified itself as an iconic Christmas movie.
I
think that it is extremely original. It's not based on a book. It's not.
Wow.
Okay.
It's not based in weird vignettes.
Oh, wow. Now she's like actively attacking. I didn't know that was
It's
part of-
one long weird vignette.
Yeah,
Okay.
It is.
That is very true.
It does take inspiration. And Jon Favreau, the director, is someone that I really love as a director and a creative person. I love a lot of the projects that he's done. I think he's really great. And he took inspiration from those, like, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer and those, like, what are those cartoons called? The claymation, the Frosty the Snowman. There's a name for those animations that come during the Christmas time, and I can't remember the name of the company that did them, but they were inspired by that art style, which is why you see them in the world that Elf lives in. He's got all those cute characters, which at first seems really random, but it's also so familiar at the same time.
Right.
Yep.
And they do a good job at making the movie wholesome and funny and walking the line where Will Ferrell could have easily been very annoying and abrasive with how childish he is, but instead they were able to walk that line and make him so endearing and wholesome, and you just root for him. You're like, I just want him to have his dad. It's very fun. And talk about quotable. That is a quotable movie. I think all the time about the 5 food groups of candy canes, candy corns. I think about that all the time, and it's just got so many iconic moments and memories. And now it's 20 years old, and it's still a Christmas movie that people will watch again and again and again. And I've got a minute.
You guys are fast. I'm impressed.
Yeah, you had a lot prepared.
It's because my movie was so good. There was just so much to communicate.
I think it just means I didn't prepare as well as you did. But yeah, I think from the writing to the way that they created the world that Elf is in and then comes out of, and the characters and everything is so good. And I will save my time. We'll be done. We'll be done with that because I don't want to just add more fluff. So now we are going to end the questions round. So since Ansen started, we get to attack his position.
Oh, wow.
For about 5 minutes.
Wow.
We get to attack.
Just get attacked for 5 minutes.
You can rebuttal with us, but you will have actual rebuttal time as well.
Okay.
You have to restrict your...
Well, you can combat a little bit.
Okay, but
because we
not
can't
too much.
just attack him. That seems, a bit rough. But
bad.
just be aware that, you'll
You're not
have...
attacking me, by the way. It's the movie. Just want to clarify.
Just want to clarify.
This could get personal.
Ansen's an idiot. His opinions are dumb.
Those are ad hominem, which we will not include here.
Those to yourself.
Keep your
His
hands
sweater
to
is
yourself.
stupid.
No.
All right.
If you're listening to the audio version, by the way,
Yes.
I've got a wonderful Santa.
We're all
we
wearing
have
sweater.
Christmas sweaters.
Yeah.
Christmas sweaters.
I required it for this debate.
True, she did demand. Yeah.
So just keep in mind, you will have 2 minutes at the end to rebut any of the points that Kara and I present to you. Okay, our 5 minutes start now.
Wow.
Kara, do you have anything you want to launch at him?
Okay, so I mean, I don't want to launch anything at you because I hope
I appreciate that.
But I do have some thoughts. Okay, so I did not grow up watching this movie.
Yeah.
So the first time I watched it, I was an older teenager, and growing up with a fair number of more Christmas Carol-y type movies and my nostalgia theme.
Wholesome.
I was baffled by this movie.
Oh, yes.
I was like, I don't know what to do with this movie, and I don't like it because I much more was in the like, I want Christmas to be like picture perfect and like everything is pretty and snowy and the music is lovely.
Victorian.
At that time in my life, I will say, as an adult, I need to watch it again because I might appreciate it more.
Yeah.
But I will say, my gut reaction, and that's the only time I've ever watched it, by the way, was I hate this movie. Because I did not understand the point. I was like, I don't understand. This is weird.
That's the thing about A Christmas Story, in my opinion, is it's a series of very memorable, quotable vignettes. Like, I triple dog dare you. Or like, shoot your eye out.
Right.
Like, there's a lot of great lines.
Daddy's going to kill Ralphie.
Yeah. And like my dad, all the time as I was a kid, he would say fragile.
Yes.
Like, he would say that all the time, and I never knew. My dad loves A Christmas Story, but
it's a dad movie. I'll admit it.
Yeah.
Okay, that could be part of the
dads are very into A Christmas Story.
And then finally, as a young adult, my mom finally allowed us to, as a family, watch it because she doesn't like it.
Okay.
So as like, it was only a few years ago, as a family, we were like, finally, we're going to see this movie that Dad keeps quoting. That we think the quotes are funny because Dad is quoting it.
But we don't know what
we don't know what it's from. And so we watched the movie.
Funny.
And I came away from that movie like, oh, so that's what they're all from. And like, I get the nostalgic appeal is real. Like, there are parts of it that I like. I just don't think holistically as a movie it quite works for a mass audience.
That's what I think it's going for. I was just going to say that. I don't know that it checks the box of mass audience appeal.
Interesting.
If it's a dad movie in particular.
Which you just admitted.
So,
I admitted that it appeals to dads. I didn't say it didn't appeal to other people.
True. Okay.
But I'm telling you right now, it does not appeal to me. But also, maybe
working on it.
I should watch it as an adult.
Yeah.
You've seen it one time.
I could rewatch it. It was a few years ago.
I could give it another chance, but off the top of my head, I'm a little bit skeptical.
It's a very weird movie too.
It's weird. Like
when you're watching it, it's almost surreal.
Yes, that's a good way to put it.
It's a little bit out there.
Like, it doesn't give me the feel good vibes. Like, it just gives me like, oh yeah, Christmas is messed up and families are messed up. Like, and sometimes you need that.
Sometimes the truth is harsh, Kara.
Not gonna lie. It's like a Christmas Vacation. When I watch Christmas Vacation, I'm like, yeah, sometimes that's how Christmas feels.
That's another movie my mom doesn't like that I only watched last year.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, this wasn't as bad as my mom thought it was.
The Hallmark Christmas movie fans.
Yeah. See, I'm not a Hallmark Christmas movie fan though.
Yeah.
But yeah. So anyway, I think that's all I have to say.
The other, those are kind of the big points that I had was the nostalgia appeal I get is a powerful like motivator for thinking this movie or any movie, frankly. Like that nostalgia is very powerful, but I do think this is a very niche movie. Like,
but I will say the other point on our list of good Christmas movies, it is very original.
Yes.
I'm not supposed to be arguing for him though. Sorry.
Yeah. What are you
So we're mostly picking on just one of our three arguments.
That's
then,
fair.
right?
That's fair.
Which is that it's
mass
doesn't
appeal.
have enough broad appeal.
Mass appeal, and what were the other points we had?
Originality.
Yeah,
and
mass appeal, nostalgia. So I could give you the nostalgia, but the nostalgia with the caveat that that's for you and certain people like you.
Not
I
as
have
much.
no nostalgia because I didn't grow up with it. I watched it only a few years ago. My dad might have some nostalgia for it.
Well, I mean, you could make that argument about literally any movie. You could say, I've watched the Muppet Christmas movie maybe twice. So I don't really have any nostalgic connection to that movie.
That's true.
Right? So like just based on how often you've seen a movie, that doesn't really say anything about whether the movie is objectively good or bad.
And your movie is the oldest of the three. So I will say that it has, because it became popular on reruns on TV, and that's how it kind of permeated through the culture. Hey, let's throw something on. It kind of seeped its way where even though I never saw the movie, I knew the lines, like I knew the quotes, but does movie quotes make the best Christmas movie?
I don't know. You were just arguing about all the quotes from Elf.
No, that's only a piece of what makes it great. We're not arguing my movie yet. We're arguing his movie.
Breaking the rules.
All right. So it sounds like maybe it's about time for me to
yes,
to
you are. We are out of time. So Ansen, you have 2 minutes for your rebuttal.
Only 2 minutes to your 5.
Okay.
Well, the first thing that you guys talked the most about was whether the movie appeals to a broad audience.
Yes.
It's a fair question. I do think it appeals the most to dads and people who like less traditional Christmas movies.
Yes.
Because it is definitely not It's a Wonderful Life. It's not the like feel good, everything everything is perfect and rainbows and unicorns and sunshine kind of movie. I think it is a much more realistic portrayal of how Christmas actually goes for most families. And so I think there is value in that. And I think that is the part that could create more of a broad appeal, is the fact that, like, I think dads can relate to some of the dad scenes in here. There's some really funny scenes with the mom and her, like, trying to, like, put coats on her kid and get his arms down and, you know, reassuring that her youngest son that her husband is not going to kill her oldest son. There's some, like, kind of mom, like, sweet moments in there. And so that's the part I think that kind of could broaden the appeal a little bit, is because there are vignettes that are about moms, about dads, and about kids, and other members of the family too, kind of all incorporated into the movie. The other part that I would say about the nostalgia, I would definitely argue that this movie is the strongest of that point of the three. And not because, I mean, like I said, you could argue nostalgia from the perspective of, like, did I see the movie? Am I nostalgic about the movie? That's a very personal, subjective thing that doesn't really have anything to do with the movie. So for me, the nostalgia point has more to do with, does the movie itself portray, like, nostalgia? And that is where I think this movie beats out the other two, is because it's portraying classic, like, holiday events and feelings and situations and moments, whereas the other two movies are a little bit more like zany, off the wall, like, not real life kind of situations, right? So, like, Elf is a little more like, this is, you know, we don't actually have elves from the North Pole living in New York. We don't actually have, like, Muppets running around
that we know of.
That we know of. So that's where I would go with the nostalgia thing. It's not so much like, did you watch the movie? But more just, it represents
the content itself.
The content itself is nostalgic in terms of what it represents. So
interesting.
And I don't mean to help your argument, but the movie itself is old Ralphie actually telling the story of his childhood.
It's him reminiscing about his childhood.
So it is literally, like, nostalgia him being nostalgic.
Nostalgia is basically the, like, theme of the movie. That is the movie.
That's interesting.
I just wanted to make that point.
It's being nostalgic about all these different things that happen during Christmas time.
Okay.
Yep.
Interesting.
So now we get to fight Kara.
Good luck.
I love the warring language that you use.
I don't know.
All right, so a few minutes to talk about
okay,
Muppet
so we
Christmas
have
Carol.
5
Muppet
minutes
Christmas Carol.
to defeat Muppet Christmas.
I'll let
I'm
you
ready.
start, Zoe.
Okay, so I have to have full disclosure. I am a obsessed Muppet fan. Like, I grew up watching, they were DVDs of the Muppet Show when it ran during the 70s and 80s and whatever.
Awesome.
So old school, like,
Old school
classic Muppet Show. I'm, like, the only Gen Z person that can quote scenes from that show. It's ridiculous. It's very isolating. But anyway, I cherish the Muppets with all my heart.
Give you some
That being said... That being said, I don't think The Muppet Christmas Carol is the best Christmas movie of all time because it is a good Muppet movie.
Okay.
You know, that it's good for having Muppets, and it's a good carol. It's a good time, no doubt. But I don't think it hits in terms of necessarily the originality because it's already based on a book, which is a classic into itself.
Yeah.
But then you're just adding Muppets on top of it, right?
Okay.
And then what else do we have? We have mass appeal. And I know you kind of said there was some mass appeal to it. Like, kids are obviously going to love it because it's Muppets, and the parents who have the children or family members may be dragged to watch it together. But if you're like, don't have kids, don't watch kid content, you're probably not going to pull up the Muppet movie Christmas Carol unless,
I mean,
I'll help you out on this one just a little bit.
Nostalgia,
right.
That's true.
I think of the three, the Muppet movie is probably the least accessible for an adult who is not already familiar with the movie.
That's what I was trying to say.
So if you've watched any of these movies as a kid, like, you can go back and watch that movie again because you have kind of that, like, nostalgic emotional connection to it.
Yeah.
If you don't have an emotional connection, all three movies, frankly, are going to be harder to get into.
No, Elf will be better to get into right off the bat, but we'll get into that later.
We'll come back to that. But I think, like, the Muppet Christmas Carol is probably harder to get into as an adult if you don't have kids and if you don't have a nostalgic connection.
You kind of need that jumping point.
It feels like, oh, that's a kid's movie.
That's a kid's movie.
Yeah.
Like, why choose the Muppet as opposed to the normal Christmas Carol unless you have that lead in to be drawn to the Muppets, which I get it. Muppets are awesome. I know. And I could
They are
preach
awesome.
more Muppets for people. Like, if they could get more Muppet in their lives,
It
I
would
think
be
it would be better. But
That's true.
That's a hard ask sometimes, if we're being real.
I will say though, my husband did not grow up watching it.
Okay.
Or the Muppets. And he watched it with us, and he was like, I know it's not my turn yet, but he was pleasantly surprised.
Yeah.
By it. He was like, okay, that's actually pretty good.
So
This is
you were
pretty
his
funny.
lead-in, though. Would he have
That's
picked
fair.
it on
That's
his
fair.
own?
Probably not. But does that necessarily mean it's not the best Christmas movie just because he wouldn't have picked it on his own?
It means it doesn't have as massive an appeal as perhaps Elf. But we'll get into that later.
Just to pick a random one.
Just to pick a random one. Anson, do you have any other talking points for The Christmas Carol?
I think it's a movie that I like, but I wouldn't put it at the top of my list. I think probably the broad appeal one is probably the biggest one. That's probably where I come to it most. Like, that's not a movie that I was familiar with as a kid or really ever watched as a kid. So I was more exposed to it as an adult. I've seen it a couple times now as an adult, and I find like the Muppets fun and amusing, but not like deeply emotionally connective. So like,
Interesting.
it's fun and interesting, but it's not something that like I would imagine myself like developing an attachment to at this point.
I actually want to jump off of that because out of all of the Muppet movies, right, and just having a lot of Muppet stuff in my brain from watching so much Muppet things, I think there are better Muppet movies that help you emotionally connect to the Muppets than the Christmas Carol one. For example, my favorite one is The Muppets Take Manhattan, which might be the first one that they made. But I feel like there's a real deep character driven, emotional, even though they're felt puppets, like there's still a lot of connective.
Credit to them for being able to do that with Muppets.
Exactly.
But
And they're very relatable characters and you're on a journey with them. But in the Christmas Carol, you've taken the iconography of the Muppets and you've put it on top of the Christmas Carol. So now it's not Kermit and Miss Piggy. Kermit is playing this character and Miss Piggy's playing this character.
I really love the Muppets as like hosts of like shorts and stuff.
Yeah.
Like I love like their like short clips and like that kind of
They're
stuff.
variety
The
show.
movies I have a little bit of a harder time getting into. Just like feature length movies with puppets and like it just
Try the Muppets Take Manhattan. It's a good one.
I feel like 5-minute like short clips of Muppets, like that's like that's their sweet spot. Like watching the Swedish chef like bork around the kitchen for like 3 minutes is awesome. I don't know that I need like an hour and a half of that. Yeah.
Well, I don't know. Is he in the Carol?
Yeah, just briefly.
Just briefly. There you
Cameo
go.
appearance.
Just briefly. So
He's at the Fozziewig Christmas party.
you have 2 minutes now to rebuttal us.
Okay. Well, I would say that this is an important movie because although the Muppets are perhaps a little more of a lighthearted comedic genre, I think that they pair well with this classic, The Christmas Carol, because it helps to introduce kids, which I know this isn't one of our criteria, but I would say it was a good medium to introduce kids to this story. And I would say that the emotional connection was maybe less about the Muppets themselves and more about the characters in this movie and more about like Michael Caine as Scrooge, which let's be honest, he is a master of his craft and performed that role as if he was like in a Shakespeare play. So I would say to me, that's more of the emotionally connective part of that movie. And the Muppets were just kind of a guide. Like they just kind of come alongside you and help you along. If you're like, I'm not interested in this story, why should I be? They add just enough of a twist. And I think that's where the originality comes in. I mean, you could say it's not original, but also we're talking Charles Dickens with like chickens and rats and Gonzo. Like
Gonzo.
That's pretty
That's
original.
a fair point, yeah.
And they bring some refreshing originality to the story because of those interesting dynamics and characters. And there's talking vegetables. I mean, that's pretty fun. And there's a guy that has like a boomerang fish in the street that he's selling. Throw the fish away and it comes back to me. So speaking of quotable, I could quote this entire movie too. So those are those 2 points. And I see what you're saying about the broad audience appeal. That is fair. I think if someone were to give it a chance, like my husband did, they would be surprised, even if they wouldn't necessarily initially choose it from a range of Christmas movies. I think they might be surprised by it.
All good points.
But yes, I guess I guess that is my rebuttal
Okay.
for now.
You did good on time.
Thank you.
And now you guys can fight me.
Okay.
5 minutes.
This is a hard one to fight because I do like it.
Yeah.
But
Elf is a good movie. I have found some people, including one of my family members, that don't like this movie.
same.
So there are people that really don't like it.
Yeah. So the broad appeal.
Yeah,
It's tricky.
the main thing that seems to be the objection that
Yeah, I
I
wanna hear what the objection is.
one, a lot of people really don't like Will Ferrell.
That's true.
And so
That's
he's a very
true.
like lightning rod actor.
We will get to that.
That's fair.
And I think part of that is it very much does, like you kind of made the argument, and I'm not sure I fully disagree, but you made the argument that it like kind of straddles that line really well of like making Buddy the Elf an endearing character as opposed to an annoying one. But I don't think everyone would agree with you
No,
on that.
I see.
I think there are some people who would say that Buddy the Elf crosses over from endearing to annoying.
Too annoying. Okay.
And even more worse than annoying is I think some people would say Buddy the Elf as a character crosses into that kind of like cringy kind of domain where you literally feel uncomfortable watching him in certain situations.
That's fair.
And this is a thing I've heard a number of people talk about with different movies where they really just don't like watching movies that create like
Cringe
super
factor.
like
Embarrassing.
cringy, embarrassing
Yeah.
like situations.
That is fair.
And this movie is basically like one big long
Cringe
Yeah.
fest.
one of those. Like, it's like a whole movie of just like a character
It is.
embarrassing himself.
It's so true.
Right? And if you are the type of person who is easily embarrassed or self-conscious, or you feel self-conscious on behalf of another character, this can be actually a really, really uncomfortable movie to watch. It's
painful.
Because
Yeah.
you're just like sitting there watching Buddy like
Humiliate
happily
himself.
like humiliate himself for like an hour and a half. And that can be like a deeply uncomfortable experience for some people.
So true.
So I think that's like the area where you lose some people with Elf is if that's you, like it not only is not like, unlike the other two movies where it's like, okay, well, maybe this just isn't my cup of tea.
Just neutral.
Yeah. And you feel kind of like neutral about it or just not super drawn to it. This one can actually be one where if you're in that category, you would actually like turn the movie off. You're like,
Yeah,
I can't watch
handle
this. I can't handle it because
Interesting.
it's kind of too much.
I think I agree. And this fits in the same category, really, with that broad audience appeal. I think older audiences, members in particular,
Yeah.
like my parents, like we all tried to watch this as a family one Christmas, and we did, but like only my siblings and I were laughing. Like my parents did not enjoy this, or at least my mom. I don't remember if my dad did or not. But it was one of those. So I think the broad audience appeal is tricky on this one.
Yeah, you take it to like an older audience that's not familiar with it.
Yeah.
Like the humor definitely is of a different kind of generation. Like
Yep.
it's a much newer movie than either of our previous
Yes.
two. And I think that's reflected in the audience that really
the
likes
humor,
it.
yeah,
like
definitely.
people under the age of 40 tend to love it.
Yep.
But people over the
like-
age of like 60 are kind of looking at it going like, this is just kind of bizarre
Ridiculous.
and weird.
Yeah, this makes
Yeah.
no sense to me. Yeah.
Right.
So I think there's that. What are the other two? Nostalgia and originality. It's definitely original. It's got I would say some of the nostalgia factor from those original cartoons, like we're talking about those claymation.
The beginning of it, I do
beginning is
really
pretty-
appreciate that part of it, like that you said. But that doesn't really, I mean, other than like maybe again at the very, very end, it's kind of like they move on from that relatively
Really quickly. Yeah.
And then you just get Buddy in like,
Ridiculous
in New
situations.
York the rest of the time. And so I would say like that kind of like, the nostalgia, at least in that sense, is pretty short-lived and
Yeah,
not
it
really
doesn't-
like a major part of the movie.
It's not.
So it would have been maybe kind of nice to like have that aspect of it like built in a little bit more. And then there's some parts that like the way that like Santa Claus is portrayed in particular, like I feel like is definitely a unique take on him.
He is kind of interesting.
He's not the like just nostalgic, like jolly, like sugary
He's a little bit
character.
rough, isn't he? Yeah.
Like
It's a little bit gruff.
A lot of like this movie is kind of like gruff and rough around the edges.
That's
so
very
if you're
true.
really going for like, I just want like the nostalgia, like feel good movie, like there are parts of it, particularly around like Buddy and his family, that get to that point. But there's also a lot that doesn't really feel that way.
That's true.
So a little bit rough around the edges, I would say, on that one. And then let's see, nostalgia, originality. I think we've kind of hit on both of those.
And
broad
mass
audience
appeal.
appeal. So yeah, I
Hit
feel
on
like we've made a good argument here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Zoe
luck.
disagrees.
Oh, I need 2 minutes. There we go.
There you go.
So let's start with Will Ferrell, since that was brought up early on. I agree with you. Will Ferrell is very hit or miss. Sometimes he does a good job, but most of the time it's like, meh. My mom in particular has told me how much she doesn't like Will Ferrell.
Yeah.
But
Seems to be a common mom opinion. My mom has that opinion also.
Same.
But I think that he actually does a very good job in this role. I do think he walks the line. It is a very narrow line. That is very easy. And I totally understand the point that some people might find him more annoying than endearing. And I think that is kind of the point, that he is kind of annoying to the characters in the movie.
Sure.
He's certainly annoying. People are annoyed by him, especially his dad, who's like, oh my God, stop. Like, you know, that's like kind of the point of the movie. So I understand that opinion, but I do think that I don't know for a fact, obviously, because I didn't poll it and I don't know what the polls would say, but I feel like that might not be the majority. I don't know if a majority of people would say, oh, I don't like Elf because he's annoying. Again, I don't know that for a fact, but
I think that's fair. I think it's probably a minority opinion. But
the movie, when it came out, like, was such an instant, like, oh my gosh, this movie's so funny. It's so like great. And it stood the test of time over 20 years. It didn't just become successful on release and then go away to the obscures of like, I don't like what is that movie with the train and the kids?
Oh, the Polar Express.
I don't like that movie. And I like, that's one that I feel like came and went. Choo-choo away.
That was a book originally too.
Yeah, I'm sure the book is good, but I really don't like that movie.
Didn't stand
but anyway, there are
animation
movies.
certainly.
Oh, the animation was rough. Yeah.
But like, the point being, like, this movie has stood for the past 20 years as like an iconic Christmas movie. And we were talking about rough around the edges. Ansen, your movie is really rough around the edges.
That's a fair point.
We've been talking about how it's like a more realistic Christmas where it sucks, and like your parents are really like, you know, this way, or your siblings are that way, or your friend's tongue gets stuck on an ice pole and you gotta help them out. You're gonna
That's a fair point.
And that was my timer, so my rebuttals are over.
Oh man.
Okay,
That was quick.
So now each of us will have 2 minutes of concluding remarks.
Oh,
so
Wow, I'm not sure that I have a lot more to say.
Me neither.
well,
Okay,
you're
hang on,
basically
hang on.
summarizing all of the points. So everything that you talked about and all of the points that we've talked about your movie, you don't have to use the full 2 minutes, but you're just trying to wrap up your argument in a bow so that Andrea, our lovely Andrea, will make the final votes. You're trying to convince our listeners and Andrea.
Okay.
All right.
So am I going first?
Yes, you'll go first.
All right. So give me our 3 points again. We had nostalgia,
Originality and mass appeal.
Okay. Let's start with nostalgia. I think my movie wins hands down on nostalgia. That's literally the idea of the movie. It is a series of vignettes that displays scenes that pretty much everyone can relate to in some way. Even if you can't relate to the specific thing that happened in that situation, you can relate to the theme or to the idea of it. So I think it wins on nostalgia. On originality, it's hard to argue that it's not also pretty original. That rough around the edges, like, kind of component to it is also part of its originality. It's a very unique Christmas movie. I can't really think of another Christmas movie that's much like it. There are other adaptations of A Christmas Carol. There are other like kind of just zany adventure like Christmas movies, but there aren't a lot of movies like A Christmas Story. So I think it's very good on originality. And then mass appeal, I think I will concede that there are probably certain people that it appeals to more than others, but I think everyone can find a place in it because of that like nostalgia relatability thing I was talking about. Like there is something for everyone in the movie at some point, whether it's you were a kid and you remember what it was like to be dared by your friends to do something crazy that you probably were going to regret, or whether you're a mom and can relate to cooking a whole really great holiday dinner and then having everything go wrong and something get ruined and having to go get takeout instead, or whether you can, you know, relate to being a kid and really, really wanting something and then being told you're not going to get it and then maybe finally getting that wonderful present. There's something in there for everyone.
Wow. All right. Some strong arguments there.
All right, Kara.
In conclusion, Home Alone is probably the best Christmas movie.
I thought that someone was going to pick Home Alone. I was shook. It's like, wow.
That would have been a strong contender.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
I was my backup.
It's probably like all of our second places, which
really
means
is.
it probably is the winner. But anyway.
Anyway, we're gonna go
moving
past
on.
that. All right, Kara.
All right, so we're going to start with the nostalgia factor. I'm going to borrow some of this lingo from theconversation.com. The special combination of the treasured story of A Christmas Carol and beloved characters from a much loved and much missed creator makes for a particularly heady nostalgia in the Muppet Christmas Carol.
Even citing sources. This is amazing.
Okay. Also, among the many screen adaptations, okay, we're going on to unique. Among the many screen adaptations of this movie, The Muppet Christmas Carol is unique, not least because Gonzo is, as the unclassifiable whatever, is Dickens. And Rizzo the Rat is his grounded, wisecracking sidekick. Hello. What other Christmas Carol adaptation is the rat going to be looking for his jelly beans? That does not happen in other Christmas Carol movies, I'm just saying.
True.
But it also draws on this yearning for snowy Victorian Christmases. It's got that like orchestra in the background, expertly balances humor, dread, and sentimentality. And then we have the broad audience appeal, which I still argue is broader than some Christmas movies. But although I will concede, if you don't have kids or weren't originally introduced to this, it could be tricky. But again, I feel like my whole family will appreciate this movie. Like mom, dad, brothers. Like that's a tricky one at Christmas, to find a Christmas movie that everyone is willing to watch and not roll their eyes or like leave the room at. And this is one that usually wins every time. Everyone is like up for this one. So that is my argument.
That is your argument.
All right, Zoe.
All right.
Have at it.
So in terms
Bring it home.
In terms of originality, I don't think there's any movie quite like Elf that is able to take the nostalgia of the old cartoons that we had talked about. Again, there's a name for them and it's escaping me. The Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer like iconography, blending that in with a character that is wholesome and endearing but annoying, but you love him. But you love him. And it's fun to watch him go on his zany adventures trying to figure out where he belongs and who he is, which is relatable to everyone. I think it has such mass audience appeal. I think the fact that it did so well upon release and continues to do well after 20 years is a testament to how relatable it is to mass audiences. And there's never going to be a perfect movie that fits everyone, but we are arguing for the best Christmas movie. And I think that this is a movie that maybe your family members, I guess, don't want to sit down and watch together, but I think a lot of families,
everyone except for Kara's family wants to sit down and watch this together.
There are outliers, of course, but on a majority mass
Ansen's family as well. Sorry.
There are outliers in this room, but speaking like mass across America, I think a lot of people, when Elf comes on the TV, it stays on. And that people will enjoy watching him eat that crazy spaghetti and, make snowflakes and sing with the pretty elf lady. Just the grumpy dad. And it's so good and so iconic for a reason.
I would say well argued to all of you.
Yes.
And I also would say I like all three of these movies.
That is fair.
I think they're good Christmas movies.
Yeah.
So Andrea has a tough pick ahead of her.
That's fair.
Yes.
Come over there.
Yeah, you gotta come
Andrea's
over
gotta come
here.
over.
All right, so we're bringing Andrea over
Our
to a
wonderful
microphone
Andrea
to declare
is our
the winner.
Oh my goodness. So I agree. All these movies are excellent. Well done. However,
One person
rose
rose
must
above the
live
others
and the others die.
and made a beautiful, compelling argument.
though, the one thing that only one of these movies has is a 24-hour TBS on repeat run.
Oh.
And that would be A Christmas Story.
Oh.
So I think The Christmas Story is the one that beats out the others.
As the best Christmas movie?
Yes.
The best Christmas. It has the word, Christmas story. It is a Christmas story.
I should have used that argument.
Oh my gosh.
The only one that has the word Christmas in it. No, that's true. That's true.
There you go.
But
The only one that I don't know.
that meets all the
I'm
other
just
criteria.
gonna trust that Andrea's decision was correct.
I will accept defeat this time.
All right.
And
This time.
This time.
We'll get you next time.
Next time.
Really though, I do
Yes.
gotta say,
Yeah.
Home Alone.
It's a good movie. Oh,
Why
wow.
did none of us pick Home Alone?
I'm not
was
sure.
I was
It occurred to me I don't know.
Yeah.
It was one of you were speaking, and I was like, I should have been listening and like started to zone out or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
But
like, it
I was
meets
like,
all the
Home Alone meets
criteria.
all these criteria really, really well.
It does. Why
Yeah.
didn't we pick her?
I was torn between Elf and Home Alone,
Yeah.
and I went for Elf because my family rewatches that more. But we have the DVD of it, which helps.
so funny. You're right. Home Alone meets all of
See,
it.
like sometimes I think that is like the thing, right? Like if we all have like our individual favorites
Yeah.
that maybe are a little more like niche or like
Yeah.
specific to us. But if like everybody has the same
Yep.
second best Christmas movie,
That is
So-
probably the first.
then
Really,
maybe
it's
that is
Home Alone.
really the true winner.
So what we have learned is we are all
surprise
wrong. Twist of events, we were all wrong, and it's Home Alone. And one
Like,
last.
how bad at debate do we have to be
to be like
to have
actually
a movie that nobody made the case for actually be the one where I'm like, oh yeah, that's probably
actually
the
and
winner.
winner.
one honorable mention, just because my husband had pointed this out.
yeah,
to
so
me.
throw in some honorable
the
mentions.
honorable
Yeah.
mention
Yeah.
of It's a Wonderful Life.
Yeah.
He was so sad that none
It's a
of us had
Wonderful
picked
Life
it.
is
it's
up
fair.
there, for
It's
sure.
very
Classic.
high.
Yeah.
Do you have any other like
Honorable mentions.
honorable mentions?
Great question.
Die Hard.
No.
I'm not one of those people. I know there are those people, but that's ultimately like that's
silly.
the ultimate niche
we
thing.
gotta throw
like
in
Home
Christmas
Alone.
Vacation as an honorable
Oh
mention.
yeah,
Yeah, Christmas Vacation.
It's,
Yeah.
You know, it's
Yeah.
in there along with the
It's
Christmas
like
Story,
a
real life.
cultural
Yeah.
iconic.
Oh yeah.
It's one of
know.
those you watch and go, yeah, that's what Christmas feels like. What is the line? One of my favorite lines from that movie is, I don't know what to say, honey, except it's Christmas and we're all miserable.
Right.
Like, that's how I feel sometimes as
Yep.
a grown up.
Yep.
So that's an honorable mention.
Relatable.
Are there any like Christmas? You mentioned A Christmas Story is up there for you as one that you like did not
Don't like,
So,
yeah.
Are there any other Christmas movies that you just really don't
Any
like?
Hallmark movie.
Okay.
Oh yeah, I don't love
Like
Hallmark movies.
so talking about like there is an appeal to these Christmas movies where they're a bit rough around the edges, they're a little more realistic, like
Yeah.
Christmas Vacation, Christmas Story, or maybe Elf if it's you know
Yeah,
you were
yeah.
like it's so rough
Hey,
around the
I-
edges.
I-
But
I like
but,
Elf.
like,
I was just
Hall-
trying to argue against you.
Hallmark movies are so curated
They're the
and
opposite.
manufactured
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
pretty, and it grosses me out. Like they're
Yeah.
too aesthetically perfect, and I
everything
just,
about
yeah.
them is that way.
This
Yeah.
might be controversial, like hot take. I don't really love the Home Alone sequels. Like
Oh yeah,
a lot of people love Home Alone 2.
I like Home Alone
I'm
too.
kinda
I like
on it.
I like the first one more, but I do like two.
I still like
Yeah.
two.
Yeah.
I don't like. I don't even
I don't like
know.
the other sequels.
There's my like
though.
hot
No.
take Christmas.
There you
Yeah,
go.
hot
thing.
take.
Ooh.
There's some recent Christmas movies that have been made in recent years that I've heard are really good. I've seen Klaus.
Yes.
That was on Netflix a few years ago, and it was good.
I don't think I ever actually fully saw that one. I need to watch it
It's
again.
on Netflix.
Another honorable mention
Yeah.
for me that is a newer one. I just forgot the name of it because it's so new.
Oh.
It is Will Ferrell and Ryan Reynolds. It's called Spirited, I think.
Oh.
And it's on Apple TV Plus.
Oh.
And it's like a musical. It's like
What?
a modern retelling of like, it's another Christmas Carol-esque
Okay.
movie, but with a twist. And there's some language in it, but I loved it. Like very fun.
All right.
Very unexpected.
Good to know.
Yeah.
Any other honorable mentions? There's probably a million more that
I'm
we're
all out.
forgetting.
Eloise at Christmas time. That's way,
Who?
way off the wall. Eloise
I haven't seen that.
at Christmas time. Have you seen? Andrea has. I've seen it. It's so good. Julie Andrews. The end.
Oh, I love Julie
enough.
Andrews. Okay.
It's so good. It's so
Okay.
quirky and like off the wall and bizarre. It's based on a book. Again, it's in the Plaza Hotel. It's so adorable and it has such a cute storyline.
One more honorable
Okay.
mention: The Santa Claus.
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah.
Tim
Yeah,
Allen.
that's one that my family
was-
loves to
yeah,
rewatch.
that's a
That's
good one.
a good one.
Growing up.
And there are probably a zillion more, but the point is, let's all enjoy some Christmas
That's
movies
right.
with our family members and not debate. Let's just love one
when all
another.
else fails,
Yes.
apparently just put on Home Alone.
But
Just put
my
on
movie was the
Home-
best.
Yeah.
Also, I won.
Also that.
Don't forget.
Technically, we're all winners.
I'm not sure that's how a debate
know.
works.
I'm
I
not
think
sure.
technically I'm the winner.
I think you're right. Yeah.
You're right. Yeah. All right. Thank you so much for listening to this Real Review debate.
Well played.
The Real Review podcast, hosted by Zoe Moody, is a part of the Real FM Podcast Network. You can listen to more Real FM podcasts or Real FM radio on the Real FM app or at real.fm.